The downward trends. As you can see, the war continues against the so-called black man, and it will more likely get worse before it gets better. The social decay of the black community today is worse than it has ever been, and the reasons are detailed in a later chapter. Many of the psychopolitical conditions and events that led to the persecution and loss of the civil rights of the black people after 1875 are rehappening today. I shall list many of the similarities between events after 1875 through the 1880s and compare them with the events of the 1980s and the 2000s and 2010s, and as we speak today. My analysis demonstrates that these events between these two periods are similar. After 1875, there was no advocacy for the return to the African culture that was necessary for development of a strong black family and community, especially in a hostile environment. After 1975, the interest in black culture, history, and pride has declined tremendously. After the Civil War, assimilation and excessive integration became more important than the development of the black community. A similar situation exists today, and this is the reason there is degradation of the black community. Black ownership of business was far under 50% after 1875, and even today blacks don't own anywhere near 50% of the businesses in the black community. During the Reconstruction period and thereafter, there was no powerful black middle class. The author William Foster said that if there had been, this middle class would have been able to successfully challenge the opposition of the races during this period. Likewise, today there is no powerful black middle class that is indigenous to the black communities throughout America. I'm not saying that a black middle class doesn't exist. What I'm saying that a majority of the black middle class derive their strength and status from the mainstream of white society rather than from black society. If this black middle class was fired from their jobs in a white society, they will lose the middle class status and be forced to join the ranks of the unemployed and the poor. However, if this black middle class owned and operated their own institutions and businesses in the black community, such as banks, insurance companies, supermarkets, clothing stores, hospitals, law offices, and so forth, they will become a powerful indigenous black middle class, gaining their strength and status from the support of the black community. But this is not the case. An example of that is the Black Wall Street in the early 1900s. After 1875, some blacks spent a lot of time appeasing whites, and at this time they alienated the masses of the blacks. Like today, your entertainers, your boule, your minstrels. They lost the support of the blacks. Today, the same thing is happening. Some blacks play the role of Uncle Tom, trying to satisfy the whites in order to enhance their own position. As a result, they become of no use to the masses of black people. Some of these Uncle Toms are only leaders of the black elite and upper class, not leaders of the masses. Jesse, what's that guy's name? Reverend Jesse Jackson. And there's a couple others. The black people after 1875 put too much trust in the system and the Republican Party. They should have placed the trust in the Creator God, the God of Israel, and in their own efforts. Today, we are repeating the same mistake, placing too much trust in the government. This is not what the government can do for us. It is what we can do for ourselves that is important. Excessive government handout stifle the human incentives. Many people are sitting around waiting for a check instead of building the black community. There is no other nationality that will clean up and build the black community. It must be accomplished by black people. Now, this book came out in the 1980s and it's 2020, and a lot of this stuff is relevant, especially what's going on right now with Breonna Taylor. At the end of the Reconstruction period, 1875, there was a great increase of the Ku Klux Klan activity throughout the South and the West. Even in these modern times, the Klan has not only operated in the South, but has increased their recruitment and demonstrations in the North. The primary targets in the North have been the state of Massachusetts. Moreover, there has been many mysterious deaths of black men all over the country. Many are known to be racially connected. Congress passed the General Amnesty Act in 1872, which pardoned most of the rebels. Foster said this was interpreted all over the South as a sign of weakness, and it did in fact indicate the new mood of the conciliation growing in the Republican ranks. During the 1870s and the 1880s, the Klan set the South in a state of turmoil. Some arrests were made, but the Klansmen were found not guilty. Just recently, in September 1981, a jury found Klansmen not guilty of the murder of 5 men in Greensboro, South Carolina. These murders took place in November of the 1980s. In recent years, the Philadelphia Police Department murdered at least 3 unarmed black men. See, they didn't even have the cameras back then. You know how many murders and evil wickedness have gone on without the cameras? Now we're seeing these events take place in front of our eyes because we have the cameras. The Most High is showing these people for who they are, the heathens. 2 had been handcuffed, then shot. None of these 3 had committed a felony. When police officers were brought to trial for murder, they were found not guilty by practically all white jurors, just like the Breonna Taylor case. I mean, I could be wrong, but the apple don't fall too far from the tree. In other words, they were pardoned for their crimes. Murders like these will take place all over this nation every year. The conditions are definitely a repeat of the events that occurred after 1875. By the middle of the 1870s, conservationism, if I'm pronouncing that right, was increasing in this country. The federal government showed less and less interest in the enforcement of civil rights. It withdrew from the South of the federal troops that had protected the black people. The federal government left the enforcement of civil rights to the separate hostile southern states, and in 1883 the Supreme Court ruled that the Civil Rights Act of 1875, which had given black people equal treatment in public accommodation, was unconstitutional. I mean, this country's always been against so-called black people. Look at the illiteracy laws, the Jim Crow. I mean, I could list others, but we've always been divided, never united. So I don't know why they say it's the United States of America. That's a lie. In 1876, President Hayes abolished the Freeman Bureau, which rendered social aid to the poor whites and blacks. In 1981, Reagan terminated many of the social programs from the national budget with the support of growing conservative Congress. Moreover, the Reagan administration has demonstrated less interest in civil rights. One example of this disinterest in civil rights is the statement expressed by Vice President Bush at the governor's conference in Atlantic City, New Jersey in the late summer of 1981. He said, "The Reagan administration will not enforce civil rights at the point of bayonet." This statement means one or both of the two things. The federal government will not use troops to enforce civil rights on the behalf of black people. The Reagan administration will not force civil rights on individual states due to use of the courts. The trends and evidence indicate that the Reaganites have no intentions of prosecuting the civil rights violators. The United States Justice Department completed a thorough investigation of the Philadelphia Police Department during the Carter administration. This investigation revealed the widespread of civil rights violations and police brutality against minorities, especially black people. No cameras. The Justice Department under Reagan administration never filed formal charges in a court against the Philadelphia Police Department. The Reagan administration neglected to act. They let the August 1981 deadline expire. Now it's too late to do anything about it. Was this an accident? Of course not. They are playing politics. The politicians in Philadelphia and Washington have gotten their heads together behind the scenes and have agreed to let the matter rest. This is how politics operate. Furthermore, we have not heard any vocal outcry in the black community demanding the Justice Department to prosecute the police department just before the expiration of the filing date. President Reagan is not only cutting the budget, but he's also cutting the civil rights throats of the black people. His inaction on civil rights sends a signal to the racists that they can murder black people with impunity. This is definitely a repeat of the events of 1876 and today as we speak. The goal of these evil men who hunger for political power in the South was stealing voting rights from black people. William Foster says, "This was done by sheer terrorism. The Negroes who dared to go to the polls did so at the risk of severe beatings, if not at the cost of their lives. Besides, all sorts of trickery were used to disenfranchise them." Zechariah 11:5. whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich. And their own shepherds pity them not. If this is not talking about so-called black people, I don't know what is. The Bible has so many prophecies that fit us because the book was written about us and our ancestors did write it. But these people that are in high ranks in the society, the police department, the government, governors, the judges, and they set these men free because it's their system. They created it. Well, they helped create it. But I mean, it's a corrupt system. I mean, you can go to Job 9:24. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? It's this governmental system. The world is in the hand of the wicked. I mean, come on, where all these church people at? You know, saying God bless America. God ain't blessing America. I'm sorry. That God that you serve is the devil. Okay? That's not the God of Israel. The book is about oppressed people, slavery. My opinion on these churches, the Protestants, the Mormons, the Catholics, the Baptists, whatever denomination, they see all this going on and they don't say anything. It's like they accept it. You know, the Bible wasn't written about them. They believe in their false white Messiah. What would Jesus do? You know, but still no answers. So I'm going to be reading from the pseudepigrapha, the Old Testament Apocalypse of Ezra. Now this describes the Antichrist. Now this is a prophecy that's already been here since the Renaissance and in days of antiquity and still to this day. But the white Jesus, Caesar Borgia, is the Antichrist, which the Roman Catholic system created. You know, they first started out with the baby Jesus. That's why you see the Pope kissing babies and little children. And then you have the Protestants, which separated from the church. And they created the grown man, wild man Jesus. So those are your Antichrists, one of many. Antichrist. See, under this Christ or white Jesus, you know, you think you would get justice in the world or in the land because most of these people claim to be some type of religion. But under this false Christ or Antichrist, there's no justice in the land. But under this white Jesus, these people have masqueraded and there's no justice. And these people flock to these churches every Sunday and they allegedly treat their black brothers and sisters like shit. And it shows. Okay, the Antichrist. And they led me away to the north, and I saw a man there restrained with iron bars. And I asked, Who is this? And he said to me, This is the one who says, I am the Son of God, and he who has made stones bread and water wine. And the prophet said, Make known to me what sort of appearance he has, and I will inform the race of men lest they believe in him. And he said to me, The appearance of his face is of a wild man. His right eye is like a star rising at the dawn, and the other is unmoving. His mouth is 1 cubit. His teeth are a span long. His fingers are like scythe. The soles of his feet 2 span, and on his forehead an inscription, the Antichrist. He was exalted up to heaven. He will descend as far as Hades or hell or Sheol. One time he will be a child, and another an old man. And the prophet said, Elohim, how do you permit the race of men to stray? And the Most High said, Hear my prophet, he becomes a child and an old man. Let no one believe him that he is my beloved son. So through the Roman Catholic system, you see the virgin and child, which is Virgin Mary and Jesus. That is the child, the image under slavery and the transatlantic slave trade that they promoted and programmed into the slave, the Negro's mind, that this is Christ, which is false.
I saw first, my mama, my papa, or this Jesus. Now he's the one I know and love, so let's close the subject. Jesus was black, the Bible would have said so.
And then you have other sects which program the old man Jesus as well. And after these things, a trumpet, and the graves will be open, and the dead will rise up uncorrupted. Then the opponent, having heard the terrible threat, will hide himself in the outer darkness. Then the heavens and the earth and the sea will perish. Then I will burn up heaven for 80 cubits, and earth for 800 cubits. And the prophet said, "In what did the heaven sin?" And the Most High said, "Is the evil." And the prophet said, "Elohim, what did the earth sin?" And the Most High said, "Since the opponent, having heard my terrible threat, will hide in it, and because of it, I shall melt the earth, and with it the rebel of race of men." See, this is the problem I have with religion. Okay, most people don't read the book or know what's inside. They just read the New Testament. They think the law is done away. So when people think the law is done away, that's why you have these idiot cops, and along with others, shooting and killing people. Oh, God forgives you. God is love. No, this white Jesus promotes lawlessness. That's why it said in Matthew 5:17, the law is not done away with until heaven and earth pass away. But most Christians or most people who are in some type of religion don't read and can't comprehend the context of what he was actually saying. Okay? You don't learn nothing in church but a bunch of faith and nonsense.